All right, we're going to get started. This is John Decker, the Director of Community Services at Alta California Regional Center. I have a lineup, apparently, of all these Alta staff that have their videos on it. This meeting has shifted to us being regional center on camera, and a lot of our providers, I think, very busy at their agencies trying to manage things. But I certainly appreciate folks that are logging into this meeting. I still get lots of comments from people that they appreciate a little extra context to the things that are going on. So, Coffee with Community Services, it's March 25th, 11:03 a.m. We've got Lee, so we have 47 folks on right now and still beeping, so we're still having folks that are joining. We've got some regional center staff here, so we've got first and foremost our executive assistant. Trying to remember what Zach's title is. Zach, my assistant, who's here, and we've got community services specialists on. We've got Kate here, and we've got Jason, and we've got our new graduate, our newly finished with graduate school, Heather Hollingworth, as well. Congratulations. Master's in public health, right? Awesome. And then we have Odelia, who is with us. Good morning, Odelia. And we get Nicole and Shirley as well. We have our community services managers. So we have Jean and Olivia on here, and Jordan's going to be joining us once she finishes up with court hearing that she's attending right now. We've got our Associate Client Services Director, Jennifer Bloom, on this morning as well. Good morning, Jennifer. Felt like we just finished the board meeting last night, and here we are back again, right at it again. I think we finished. I know I finished about 7 o'clock last night, so it was certainly a marathon. And we have client services managers here. We have Dana, who is certainly a regular attendee. Good morning, Dana. And representing our greater Grass Valley area, we have Heidi as well. And our clinical director, Camellia, is with us today too. So good morning, folks. We've got a few things we're going to go over. We're going to discuss some of the items that occurred during the board meeting. We're going to talk about specifically talking about our service access and equity policy for our regional center that was approved last night by the board. We're going to give updates on the upcoming rate study, upcoming grassroots day that is going to be in a week and a half or so. And we have rate study update. Olivia and Jean and Jordan, myself, met with Robin LeMay, our accounting manager, this morning, so we can give you guys kind of an up-to-date on exactly where the regional center is at. And so Olivia is going to give you guys an update on that. We've got our upcoming POS disparity meetings, which start actually Monday. And so we're going to go over that, let you know where you can attend those. Got some housing discussions with you guys, kind of about some housing things that are happening. And we'll be talking about our new vendors, who we have vendored, who we announced at our board meeting last night. And then if Jordan gets back from court in time, we're going to give you guys a little update about diversion for our clients and a new guidance that we got from the department related to that. And then if that's not, we can't do it in time, then Jean's got some updates on camp and social recreation for folks that we want to make sure that we share. That being said, you guys can always in the chat on the side put your comments in their questions, and we'd be happy to answer them kind of as we go through these different things. So, we like to, in this meeting, give you guys as quick updates as you possibly can get. And so we just did a board meeting last night, and we have updates for everyone based off of the board meeting that we had. We had, first and foremost, we had our service access and equity policy that was brought up and discussed. And so I want to actually share and go over that policy with you all. This is something that our staff have, not all of our staff have even seen this. And for those of you that are community services specialists, you're going to be getting an email with this, and we're going to be talking about it in one of our upcoming internal meetings about how we are going to be utilizing this service access and equity policy when it comes to moving forward with some of the decision making and work that we're doing as the regional center. So I'm going to share this real quickly, and I am going to view it, and I'm going to make it page width, I think is what I learned, to make it a little bit easier for folks to see. So let's see here. But now I lost you all. Let me see if I can find you guys. All right, there you are. Okay, so Nicole, do you see the board policy up there? Yep. All right. So service access and equity. In 2021, the California legislature codified in section 4511.1 of the Lanterman Act the following: supporting service access and equity for persons with developmental disabilities and their families requires awareness, skill development, and training for regional center personnel. ACRC embraces this opportunity to promote activities to meet this mandate. Now, regional centers and specifically Alta were not required to develop a service access and equity policy, but with a lot of the discussions that were going on with amongst our executive management team and us looking at ensuring that we had some high level guidance for how we are looking at service access and equity, we felt like it was important to do a policy. So it shall be the policy of Alta California Regional Center to make active efforts to enhance service access and equity in all agency actions impacting client services. So whether this is talking about our service coordinators and our case management staff, whether this is talking about Camellia and the clinical staff that she has, whether it's Iqbal and Aiko and Robin and Locke, our fiscal staff, and certainly with community services, when we say things like all agency actions impacting client services, that's basically everything that we do at the regional center. ACRC serves a richly diverse community with varied cultural perspectives and languages. ACRC will proactively identify and provide access to resources to ensure equity among all members of our community. Clients of all cultural identities, whether race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, language, geographic locations, etc., will receive the necessary supports to maximize their capability for community engagement and to enhance their physical, emotional, and social well-being. There was 3 focus groups that were held by Helen Neary and Herman Kothi, so our cultural diversity specialist and our training manager. And those 3 focus groups, the first one was a professional group, the second one was parents and family members, and the third one was clients. And there was a lot of rich discussion. I think we got about 20-page long transcripts for each of the meetings that we attended. And so, excuse me. And so one of the things that we captured from that is, or one of the many things that we captured from that is kind of this next area here. So a chief concern of clients, families, and professionals is the need for empathetic communication that demonstrates our capacity to understand a client's point of view and cultural perspective. To address these concerns, we will tailor communication to meet the needs of clients and families. This will improve relationships and increase opportunities for informed choices and participation in preferred services. In order to fulfill our mission statement, ACRC embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion. We demonstrate this by incorporating our service access and equity values into agency-wide decision-making. So here are our values. ACRC values the person-centered process and believes that all individuals should be heard, respected, represented, and supported by the agency. ACRC values the client support system. Family, friends, service providers, and advocates contribute to overall well-being and community inclusion. ACRC values an empathetic workforce of regional center and service provider staff that recognize clients as experts of their own culture, are committed to lifelong learning, and promoting service access and equity across all systems of care. ACRC values robust community partnerships. ACRC acknowledges the contributions of community partners in informing agency policymaking and enhancing services and supports offered to our diverse community. So how are we going to operationalize this, right? Now you've heard that we have the values, and now comes operationalizing it. ACRC will turn these values into measurable actions that promote service access and equity. This will include, at minimum, development of procedures, performance contract measures, training, resource development, targeted community outreach, internal and external communications. ACRC believes that developing the competency of staff and service providers facilitates a service provision that is empathetic, compassionate, collaborative, and sensitive to interactions with our community. Through our work in promoting service access and equity, we hope to improve communication, trust, and satisfaction with clients and families. ACRC is committed to developing services and supports that are responsive to the needs of our entire community. We will work to break down identified systemic barriers to service access, increase utilization, and reduce disparities in the system. ACRC will seek regular and consistent feedback from clients and their circles of support to assess the effectiveness of the efforts made to address service access needs. So that's our service access and equity policy. And again, for those of you that we've got our community services specialists on here, we'll be sending it out to you guys, and we will be having a discussion internally amongst the community services specialists and managers about how we can ensure that we are really using this service access and equity policy to create kind of a structure and a framework that we need to follow when we're looking at making some of the agency decisions related to not only outreach to our community, but vendor relations, and also trying to get more vendors and the types of vendors that we would be getting as well. So stay tuned for that. I am again, this was not something that our regional center was like required to do. It was something that Lori felt really strongly about and kind of gave EMT the charge to work on this. Again, Helen and Herman did a ton amount of heavy lifting as it related to this. And then myself and Camelia, our clinical director, and Michelle Johnson, our director of client services, all worked together, collaboratively to try to get the language tightened up, and also to not write a policy that was 10 pages long, because most policies are usually about a page or so. So that being said, very pleased. Our board was happy to receive this and approve it as well. And I was pleased because we had some of the clients that were actually part of the focus groups were some of our board members, and so our client board members. So they got to really have a direct impact in some of this policy development stuff. So I just wanted to share that with folks related to our board meeting. Let's see. There was and is still a lot of discussion related to the strategic planning and the activities that the regional center is doing related to that. We do have upcoming focus groups related to housing that will be occurring next month, and we will be sending out invitations, I think, widely for housing and employment. Is that right, Olivia? I know Olivia and Jennifer Bloom are the ones that are assigned to the employment focus groups, and so those will also be public ones, right? Those are going to be the public meetings. And so I think Michelle's finishing up the invitations. She'd sent a draft over to me earlier this morning, and we'll look at getting those out for folks. So if you are interested in participating in the focus groups related to the service access and equity policy. The next thing that I want to go over with folks is what part of the discussion last night, which is our new services. Or excuse me, I don't want to go over new services. I want to go over Grassroots Day. That's what I want to do. All right. So I'm going to share real quickly the Association of Regional Center Agencies. Some of you are familiar with the Association of Regional Center Agencies. That is the lobbying group for the regional centers. All regional centers are part of the association. And there is an upcoming Grassroots Day, which is, anyone have the date? I think it's like the 4th or something like that. I think that, or 4th or 5th. The 5th, yeah. The 4th in the evening is the kind of the warm-up activities, and then the 5th is Grassroots Days. So for us, it's nice because it lets us know exactly what are the highest priorities in essence amongst the state regional centers. And so I want to share that with you all as service providers, because almost every single one of these is going to have an impact on you as well. So I'm going to share this All right. Are we seeing the association of regional Michelle Ramirez from CBM? Do you see advocacy key points real big on your screen? Maybe, maybe not.
I do.
All
Yes.
right.
Thank you.
Perfect. So I want to touch on the different areas that are important to the regional centers. First and foremost, they have on here modernizing the core staffing formula. To give, I guess, some of our staff an understanding, the core staffing formula was developed back in the 80s, and it determines what number of positions are funded by the state of California at the regional center. And as much as we would love to be able to hire a service coordinator for $35,000 a year, that's not realistic anymore, is it? That we can, maybe for those staff that started back in the 80s, that might have made sense, but we haven't paid staff below that amount in a really long time. Unfortunately, though, the core staffing formula still has some of these old metrics that are built into them. And so there is a request to reform the core staffing formula. The biggest change being requested would tie the cost of service coordination to similar state positions. These updates would support all the key functions of regional centers, so service coordination, intake, community services, and other key policy positions. So again, we are required to keep our caseloads low, right, and not have our service coordinators, get just overwhelmed by 80, 90, 100 person caseloads. But when you look at how the state allocates money to the regional centers to hire new service coordinators, it's less than, I mean, it's almost a third of what it really costs to hire a staff person. And so they want this to be modernized. And I think that that will certainly make it a lot easier for us to be able to meet our caseloads if we have a modernization of our core staffing formula. This is the next one that's been big, and you guys have heard it from clients and families and everything else. And this is the repeal of fees on families. The annual family program fee and family cost participation program are two fees charged to families receiving regional center services. These fees, or as they call them here, disability taxes, impact early start families the most. Getting young children services quickly is very important. The fees act as a barrier to needed services and can create problems between service coordinators and families that they are supporting. I think everyone that's been a service coordinator or has been involved in case management would recognize that this is something that is going to be extremely appealing to folks to not have to take this into consideration before authorizing some of our services. So it's kind of a way to provide some real direct relief to people. The next one is from Susan Talamantes Eggman, former, I don't know if she still is, but she used to be a professor at Sac State. I remember the day she got hired. And I remember when she was running for city council down in Stockton or whatever, 20 years ago. So now she's a state senator and sounds like she's the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, it looks like, as well. So this will create an advisory council to look at ways to improve interactions between law enforcement and people with developmental disabilities. SB 882 will also explore ways to improve peace officer trainings. This bill will have direct and positive impacts on the work of law enforcement and the safety and well-being of people with developmental disabilities. So there's been a lot of concern related to law enforcement interactions with people with developmental disabilities. I know I live in Solano County, and we had an issue in Vacaville in the last year with a client, an individual with developmental disabilities that kind of got body slammed by a police officer, and they caught it on the ring camera. And I know that our regional center has had a great partnership with local law enforcement. For quite some time, Camelia's staff and we had intake, clinical, and forensics folks doing trainings with the Sacramento Police Department over at Mather, excuse me, up in North Highlands at their academy up there. And I know that state council has taken over doing a lot of trainings as well for local law enforcement. However, there is certainly more that can be done, and that's not it's not statewide where we have those types of connections throughout the state. So it sounds like they're looking at including that as well. And if these things get adopted, we'd love to come back to this group and give you guys an update on what's going on with that. We have a new forensic specialist at our regional center, Elisa, who's working for Jordan Eller, and we've got, I think there's a lot of room for us to provide additional supports to our folks that have criminal court issues. I know that we just recently started up a criminal court calendar specifically for our clients with developmental disabilities, and that's been successful. But again, the things that go on in Sacramento don't always go on throughout our catchment area, and certainly don't go on throughout the entire state. So I understand why they want to make it important and have us lobby for it. The other one is ARCA is co-sponsoring a bill from Irwin, which is many people served in the regional center want and actively seek employment, despite ample research indicating such employees have lower turnover and lower on-the-job accident rates. Employment rates remain low. By creating a tax credit for hiring a qualified individual, AB 2378 provides a meaningful incentive to hire a person with developmental disabilities. So again, in this case, it would be looking at a tax incentive. You guys know we have the paid internship programs, we've got the CIE dollars, but this is another way that they are looking to get individuals with developmental disabilities more employed. The next one is provider rate reform acceleration. This is one that has been a big topic amongst the Lanterman Coalition. I know our provider advisory committee put a letter specifically forward related to this as well. So provider rate reform acceleration, the Lanterman Coalition is a group of many of the leading statewide developmental services organizations in California, including ARCA. ARCA joins them in urging the acceleration of planned rate increases from July 1 of 2023 to July 1 of 2022. This investment will improve the stability of the DSP workforce and support staff recruitment necessary to achieve a return to greater in-person service delivery options. So this is the first time I think where I have seen it in writing that the regional centers and ARCA are specifically joining and lobbying for the rate study to be implemented faster than it has been. Eric, I know that you are on here, and I know that there was a additional letter that was done by our provider advisory committee related to the rate study. Would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about the idea behind that and kind of who it went to, that type of stuff?
Did you get that feedback?
You sound like you're in the concert hall, but it's because you are on twice, my friend. So maybe we can mute you on one and try you on the other. Try now.
Oh, that makes sense. Here.
There you go.
I was wondering why I was having certain issues. I didn't know I had joined twice. I was having login problems earlier. Yeah, so announcement, your provider advisory committee identified this as a pretty big issue that we wanted to push this legislative year. And I just got to say, you've got a great provider advisory group. A lot of us hold other positions in other statewide agencies that we lobby for. So it was good to come to that consensus early. And then all of us went back to our respective groups and said, this needs to be a priority. And here are the parameters of that. So it's really good to see that made its way back to the Lanterman Coalition. It made it back to the UCP ARC Coalition. It made it back to ARCA. So anyways, as part of that process, we wrote a letter, 3-page letter that went, this is one paragraph, but it was 3 pages that we sent out that tried to really make the case as strongly as we could, really for those groups like ARCA and others that are going to have more lobbying power at the state than your local provider advisory committee to really provide some backing for that proposal. So we're glad to see it has been adopted into everybody's legislative agenda. So so for us, that was a win. You never know if it's what would happen if you didn't do it, but we know that we wanted to do all we could to make sure that this became part of the agenda. And we'll see what happens as we move towards the second half of the budget season in the May revise, if it's being taken seriously by the state. It should be. Don't get me started on how clear. It's so obvious this needs to happen. But we need to go through that process, and we will do that through June.
Perfect. So the letter that was written, which is dated March 1st, is included in the board of directors materials that we post on our website. If you there, we have all the board packets in there, and we typically will have we will always have minutes from our provider advisory committee that are in there. But this time we have a special, edition of this letter as well. So, we spent some time this morning talking about this internally, about the idea of us lobbying for this, and then also just how if we do something like this, like accelerating it, on our end workload wise, it is actually kind of nice. It makes it a little bit easier on the regional center if things get accelerated, specifically on our accounting department. And so, with that being said, we first of all have heard loud and clear from our service providers that they absolutely want this to occur. And I want to make sure that I'm reading this correctly, Eric. So what we're looking at is that 50%, being beginning on July 1st of 2022. Is that right? Instead of just the 25% increase that we would be looking at effective April 1st, it would be looking at the 2023 increase becoming effective in 2022.
Our letter asks for the full increase. We don't see a reason why you need to stop at 25 or 50%. Our letter advocated for the full amount now, with the primary reason being, if you took a poll, how many of us are struggling for staff, all of our hands would go up. And it seems pretty difficult to recover and build back our staffing when we can't pay competitive wages, especially coming out of COVID. So for us, it was a no-brainer. Do it all, do it now. If you know what 50% of the rate is, then you know what 100% of the rate is, and they have the money. There's a $26 billion state surplus. So they have the money. They're going to fund it anyways in a couple of years. Fund it now so we can try to hire at those competitive rates. We can raise our rates. And of course, this is only for those that have an appropriate rate in this rate study. We want to continue to address inadequacies and deficiencies in the rate models. So we want the time to do that. Whereas I think other folks are just asking for an acceleration to 50%, and I don't agree with that. So that was not your PAC's recommendation, but other folks are recommending that.
Yeah,
Like
in
the
the chat there.
coalition.
Yeah, exactly. And Andrea Krum put that in the chat as well, that the Land Coalition is,
Yeah.
and again, the full 100% is not just supposed to be a multiplier. It's there's also what the last 90%, that the last 10% is got a merit component
The
too.
last 10% of your rate is meant to be part of what's called a quality incentive adjustment. And I'm on that DDS work group. So it's meant to be related to generally agreed upon outcomes that show the service quality that you're providing. There'd be sort of a scale that based on metrics. And we're trying to decide what those metrics are, which is pretty difficult to do. But the idea is that the last 10% would scale. So if you met half of your metrics, you'd get 5 of your last 10%. So to get all of your last 10%, you need to score really high on the metrics that they are doing. And those have not been decided, but they're meant to be quality of service indicators, client satisfaction. You know, I don't want to get into that. I have people have different views of what that looks like, and I have a very specific one. So I'll leave that for those that want to participate in the work group. But there's a lot of discussion now about how do we set those quality indicators? Because 10% rate reduction is a big amount. So some folks were saying, oh, that isn't enough. Some advocates were saying, hey, 10%, I don't know if providers are going to go the extra mile for 10%. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. We live and die on that 10%.
Yeah,
If anything, that's really problematic.
ask those people what it was like with the 4.25% reduction.
Yeah.
And how that
So
impacted
we think
providers.
that's more than enough of an incentive. The problem is, and again, I don't want to get into it because I could go down this rabbit hole, is unintended consequences is really my big message. And I'm pretty loud in that group that you need to be really careful on how you set those metrics, because everything you do can have an unintended consequence, where people go toward, they tailor their service because they need that last 10%. So you tailor it around that versus what the client needs. So there's a lot of talk about how to get quality incentives for that, trackers for that. So if you want to participate, it's a quality incentive DDS work group. It's on their work group list. You can join in and listen in, I believe, and hear those discussions.
Eric, based on your participation in that group, are we in a place where by July we could have those quality incentives figured out
No.
by July of 2022?
Nope.
You don't think so?
No, but again, we didn't want to get bogged down in the details. There's no reason why you can't fully implement the rate increase, or God forbid, give us 90%, as a compromise, and then
Yeah.
implement that next year. It could be done for next year. But the way that the department's going, there's no way to accelerate that work. And I'll be honest, you providers don't want them to accelerate that work, because you'll be stuck with it forever, and it'll determine which services are successful or not. So I don't want to accelerate their work. It wouldn't be. It would need to come in later, just like the rate methodologies can't be clicked over. Like if you're going for a per hour to a per day to a per hour, per trip to a, if they have to change a rate methodology, that also cannot be fixed probably by July. But they can always update your existing rate now. They're doing that in April. They're doing it to 25%. There's no reason they can't do exactly what they're going to do to April to 100%, in our opinion. So that's what we asked for. We'll see what we get.
Yes, we will. I know that this is certainly very important to a lot of providers. I thought I saw Stephanie with her hand up. Stephanie, do you want to unmute yourself, and do you have a question? Maybe not. Stephanie from Let's Go Transportation. Nope, maybe not. All right. Okay, so
No, John, I didn't have my hand up.
okay. Oh, sorry, Stephanie. All right.
That's okay. Hi.
I'm lowering your hand now. There it goes. It's lowered. So with that, I think this is a good opportunity for us to give you all an update on where we're at with the rate study. So I will throw that over to Olivia. We spent quite some time talking about all of this morning. And again, as I mentioned, speeding up the rate study on our end, it's kind of a no-brainer, because a lot of the hard work will have already been done once we figure out what the rates are going to be. So at that point, it's really just whatever the multiplier is, whatever DDS is. So it wouldn't be like more work per se on our end. And certainly for us, anything that provides service provider relief, anything that will help you guys get to, a better staffing place than you're at right now is what we're interested in. So Olivia, do you want to kind of give folks just a little synopsis of where we're at right now?
Sure. So the initial DDS requests for all 4 batches have been sent in. And so from that, each batch comes back to us asking specific questions. So we have not received all rates. And to be honest, it sounds like it's going to be a little while before DDS gets everything back to that. We actually had a meeting with them yesterday, and things are slowly coming, and they're still working on some things. And like John said, we want to get it right, and they want to get it right. And so they are going through things with a comb to try to figure all of that out. What I will say, because I know this has been brought up several times in this meeting, how rate letters will go out, how those are going to go out, and whether DDS is going to be sending the ones out for DDS set rates. It sounds like that's the way it's going to happen. When that happens, we're not sure. Another thing we learned this morning from accounting is that rate tables will not be changed until the end of April. So people may want to know, I don't see my new rates on the rate table. We're not going to be doing that until later in the month. So lots of questions out there. We understand that. We are still actively working on it and trying to get everything right. And we will give you information as soon as we get that from DDS.
I think this would be a time to see if folks had questions about the rate study. And then you got an announcement for Monday's meeting, right? So any questions from folks? Oh, yeah, we have Andrea has a raised hand. Go ahead.
Hello, and I think this has already been asked, so it might be still I don't know. But we have a community-based day program with a 1-to-1 ratio. I know that wasn't in the rate study. I know there's some, Jim Knight from DDS had mentioned something about supplemental staffing, so I wasn't sure if you could have any light on how that would be deciphered, or if we're just left out completely.
I think that's one of those things they're still trying to figure out.
Okay.
It seems like transportation is also one that it's not clear to us why we don't have everyone's rates back. And so that's one thing. Robin, our accounting manager, is going to be requesting a meeting with DDS and with Burns and Associates about, because what we saw from what we returned back to us for the transportation providers, the transportation and what supported employment groups too, right? Was the other one
Yes.
where we're just missing rates. Like it's just not there for a lot of service providers. And so we're kind of trying to figure that out. And it would be great if when they emailed us, they said, oh, we didn't do these and we're going to meet with you about it. But instead they just kind of send it over and it's missing a bunch. So we're certainly doing our best. These are not going to hit the rate tables till probably right before people start billing for the month of April. And I wish that there was something that could be done differently than that. But as Olivia had the pleasure, you've been with us now, a year and a half now, Olivia, and you had the pleasure of sitting in on the rate study meeting with DDS. Was that yesterday or day before? And it was almost overwhelming, the many different ways that regional centers vendor services. And within that, the extent to which people actually follow their vendorizations as well. So, you have a vendorization, but then 15, 20 years down the line, regional centers may be using those vendorizations differently than originally. So certainly an issue with that. Let's give the update on Monday's thing, and then let's go over to more transportation stuff.
So Monday, if anyone is interested, DDS is hosting a webinar with the community care facilities at 3:30. And it is on DDS's website. I didn't see it on their calendar, but if you go to the rate study implementation section, that's where you can register for the webinar. So if you want to know what's going to happen to care homes and where they're going, their levels may be changing. And I didn't know this, but I learned that in the table of contents on the rate methodology, it says exactly what the new levels will be. So if you want to know if you have a care home and you want to know what it's going to, you can look at that. So they're going to be holding a webinar on Monday if anybody wants to join.
So go to rate study implementation, you said, and then right here, community care facilities webinar. So I know we've got some residential providers that are on here, and so would encourage you all to take a look at this. And then, they did one for transportation providers on the 4th. They did one for the supported living providers, early start, etc. And all that stuff is available right on DDS's website if you guys want to look at that. I'm going to stop sharing real quickly so I can jump over the chat. And in the chat, we have a comment. This is from Eric. Any transportation providers willing to share some service data and rate study data with me and other providers, please email me at whether you see his email address right there. I am working on an analysis of the rate models. They are deeply flawed, and I doubt many transportation companies will see a rate increase. I could explain more offline for folks. I would say that Eric's analysis of that and the concerns raised would be in line with what our discussion was this morning with our accounting department, that there's some things that we need to get figured out for transportation. And again, I feel like with the lack of information that was provided to us, like we have to schedule a meeting with DDS and with Burns and Associates. So again, we're going to be doing that. It's going to be our staff and then our accounting managers as well. Go ahead, Eric. Yeah.
So we already talked about the issue I see with the travel distance not being accounted for, but there's always been other issues in the actual rate table that was pretty difficult to decode. So if you or other folks are actually decoding that rate table, I've had to recreate it, and have a whole analysis on that rate table, and I've identified areas that are way out of whack from what I can tell. So if you guys are having that kind of discussion, let me know and I'll shoot you over some of what I was looking at for the rate tables that I think need to be fixed too.
And I will say, I'm just scrolling through the number of providers that are here, going through my little WebEx, view here, and I just see a number of transportation providers that are on. There's like 4 or 5 that are on here right now. So, take up this offer. This is a good opportunity right now for you guys to get involved, be asking questions, because the decisions that are going to be being made by the department are going to certainly impact your businesses, and they really need to understand what your concerns are related to this. So please don't hesitate. Take Eric up on his offer to kind of talk about this collaboratively and be able to help provide some more data. And I think again, we're going to see how this all shakes out, but Gene, we can talk about doing an additional another meeting with the transportation providers once things get finalized a little bit, so that we can again, capture some of the issues or concerns. But I mean, I will say we had a specialized meeting like just to talk about our supported living providers, and I think I mentioned it here, but we took that opportunity to ask DDS specifically about the transportation stuff and ensure that they understand the concerns, especially related to the distance that needs to be traveled to serve folks. But yeah, we looked at what DDS had proposed as far as rate increases, and it looked sparse to none when it came to transportation providers. And so, but that did not really align with what I think our original thoughts were. So we have to get that clarification from folks. And we will certainly report back here after we have the discussion with DDS specifically about it. Keep you guys in the loop with those discussions. Any other rate study questions that folks have right now? All right. I want to go back to our website real quickly and share with you about upcoming events. And I don't just realized that our intranet at Alta does not have our website on it anymore. That's interesting. But I'm pretty sure I can find altaregional.org in a Google search. So I'm going to share my screen again so you guys can see my screen. And I am going to go over to our menu, and I'm going to go to our events and calendar. This is Alta's website again. And you can see some of the upcoming activities that are going on. So they have this one here about the Mind Institute, but I really want to focus on our annual discussion of services to diverse communities. And so we are going to have a March 28th from 6 to 7:30. You have to register in advance for these meetings, and then we're going to have another one on March 30th from 10:30 to 12. So again, giving people opportunities. If you work during the day, you can come in the evening. If you've got issues and can't do that, then you can come to the one during the day. Previously, we used to do all of these meetings in person. We are back to in person. In the office, we have our managers in 4 days a week. We've got our line staff in at a minimum of 2 days a week. On the community services end, some of our community services specialists have elected to be in the office 5 days a week, and so we're back to it again. And but with that, we are still looking at holding these meetings virtually via Zoom. We've had such a better response and participation than we had previously with these meetings when they were held in person. And so we want to invite and ensure that everyone is aware that these are going to be coming up. And again, there was really rich discussions that occurred at the last two that we did during the pandemic, and we're going to again hopefully have another nice group of folks that are willing to discuss these issues, ask great questions, and allow us to share kind of the efforts that are being done on the regional center side. So that's our POS disparity meetings that are coming up shortly. I got something else for you all. And Gene, this would probably be a good time. I'm going to go over kind of our new vendors. So we have, this looks familiar probably because this is going to be the new newsletter that's going to come out in a week. But new service providers. So we've got pediatric day healthcare. We've got a new individual or family training competency restoration program. We've got another community integration training, prime adult development. We've got, let's see, special therapeutic services, mindset wellness. Apparently they were so good that I listed them twice in our newsletter. Maybe I should probably fix that before we send it out to everyone. We have a transportation provider, Access Medical Care. We have another environmental accessibility provider, Grimes Heating and Air Incorporated. And we have 4 new residential facilities as well that have been vendored. So really want to recognize the hard work of our community services specialists that have been working with you service providers to get these new vendors on. And one thing I always like to do is also then share what we have, unfortunately, that we're losing, so that you can also see the disparity between what we're creating and what we're currently losing. We're losing 2 programs neither program has served any clients in about 4 or 5 years. One was Brenda Hardesty's this Hardesty Small Care Home, which finally decided that they wanted to close their doors after not serving any children in the care home for at least 4 years. And then Strategies for Change. This is our drug and alcohol mentorship, or excuse me, the additional supports that we provided to folks going through outpatient drug and alcohol treatment. And there was a change in ownership. They were taken over by WellSpace, and we're kind of in some continued discussions with WellSpace about whether or not we're going to continue to seek maybe a vendorization with them. One of the ideas would be possibly looking at a usual and customary rate, since the rate I think that they're looking for is about 3 times what we were paying previously for the service. So, so with that being said, we do have a couple other service things that got vendored, and I'll throw that over to Jean. I read this one several times when I was writing this, and I kept thinking it was a description of the service as opposed to the name of the service. And then I realized that this is Trotter. So, Jean, what is Trotter?
To put it in a nutshell, it's horseback riding.
It's therapeutic riding and off-track rehabilitation?
Yep,
Perfect.
that's the name of the company. Yep.
And that is what they do. So this is our first new vendorization, I believe, that we did under the specialized recreation therapy. And then
Correct.
we've also got some other movement on camp. What's going on there?
Yeah, we have a number, excuse me. We have a number of things moving under this new social rec service code and services. So we have coming down the pike soon is Camp Tuolumne. It's vendored with Valley Mountain Regional Center, and they recently got them vendored them, and we're putting them in the system. And that camp specializes with services designed for our special population. So they have the nursing requirement, they have staff trained to our population, and I know they have done that for years. So they're really a specialized camp in Valley Mountains area, and they have done that for years. So that's pretty exciting that they're coming back on board. We're working with a number of camps locally and with other regional centers, trying to figure out if they're going to be vendored again for this year. And we just keep that movement going. And we have a number of, all of this, the requests are staffed at best practice. So we have a number of requests for swim services and swim lessons for some of our clients. And so some of those are coming on board too. They're in the works and they're pretty close. And the nice thing about some of these services is that they're going to be in the local community. So like one of the swim schools is in Woodland. And so I think that's pretty exciting that people aren't going to have to come into Sacramento or main office to receive these services, and they will be integrated in their local community, which is one of our charges. So a lot in the works, and hopefully they'll all come to fruition in a short time here.
Absolutely. I know a number of the staff. I think Kate's at all of the best practice staffings. Jennifer Bloom and the ADs kind of run the show on those, and there's just a lot of discussion going on for the needs related to this. So we're certainly really committed to trying to get these vendorizations. And I will say, just movement wise, we actually heard back from the Department of Developmental Services on our policy on the social. I know it came in today. They sent a list of questions to us that were interesting questions. So so we're going to be working as a regional center to get some of those answers back to DDS related to that, and hopefully get our social recreation policy all sewn up. But appreciate again, Jean, your efforts, the efforts of all the community services specialist staff that are working on getting these folks vendored, and the work of all of our case management staff that are really being mindful of the needs of our clients in this area and are listening to the planning teams about what they're funding, and then turning that into requests so that we can get places vendored, and so that we can make these services more widely available for folks. Another update, just real quickly, is that we have no upcoming vendor forums right now. So we have no upcoming vendor forums. We'll certainly let you know. I think our last one was EI, but early intervention vendors.
We did have a good EI vendor forum, and I think there were about 45 folks in attendance. So it was well attended and good discussions.
That is good. I mean, you think of some of those ones in the past where you had like 20 folks, maybe 25 max, for some of the in-person meetings. Again, you know, for business owners like you guys, especially in times of like being short-staffed, if there's ways that we can make it easier for you to connect with the regional center by doing virtual meetings like this, as opposed to, you know, come on down to the regional center and those types of things. We certainly want a lot of in-person meetings to occur, and we want to get back into kind of the flow of that. But for community engagement and for ease, it's really nice being able to communicate with folks this way, that have that ability. I do want to share.
John,
Oh, sorry. Go
that
ahead.
was part of the discussion, a short discussion at the vendor forum. How nice it is to do them on this platform, because like in all the outlying offices, EI therapists and that are able to attend where they weren't actively attending when we were in person. So that's a real plus.
Well, and even thinking of our own staff, you know, we have you know, managers all throughout. I mean, you guys see Heidi in this meeting every week from Grass Valley, but you know, being able to virtually attend a vendor forum and still be able to manage an outlying office, you know, is also, I think, a real benefit. So I think, you know, this is the changing of, you know, corporate America, right? Where we are, you know, thinking of things that we would have, you know, oh my gosh, a virtual vendor forum. I can't imagine, you know, doing something like that. But, you know, in looking at it, we got to look at the positives that have resulted from this change to doing things remotely. With that, I have another kind of announcement thing to make. And then I think, Jordan, we might look at some of the diversion stuff maybe next week. Maybe we'll talk. That'll give us an opportunity to meet with case management to talk about it too first, before we give folks any more information.
Sounds great.
So, another thing that I am announcing today and that we are going to be putting in place for our regional center is a housing action committee. All right, so check this out. This is, and this will be my kind of my pitch for this, which is, are you interested in contributing to the development of affordable housing for regional center clients? Are you willing to provide testimony at the local level through to the legislature? Can you commit to learning more about affordable housing opportunities in your local county by attending planning meetings and reviewing online materials? ACRC is seeking interested clients, family members, advocates, and service providers to support our efforts in expanding housing opportunities throughout our catchment area for adults with developmental disabilities. ACRC is seeking representation from our 10 counties. Alta California Regional Center Community Services Director John Decker and Housing Specialist Dan Kilmer will host a monthly meeting of this group to receive updates and to discuss the development and utilization of affordable housing opportunities. No previous housing advocacy experience is required. This is in response to everyone being very interested in housing. And I will say that I personally get information sent to me every few days from people all throughout our catchment area that are interested in contributing to trying to connect individuals with developmental disabilities to affordable housing options. What we are desiring to do with Alta is having this formalized and operationalized, where we have a group of individuals we're hoping throughout our entire catchment area that would be willing to be representatives for their local area, for example, so that when Yolo County is going to have a planning meeting to talk about their upcoming, funds that they're going to be dispersing, that we have a list of clients, family members, service providers, etc., that we can reach out to and say, hey, this meeting is coming up. Would you be willing to go in and provide testimony? Or even better, the providers in those counties are monitoring these things themselves and then reaching out to the regional center and saying, hey, these are upcoming activities that are happening, and we want the regional center to focus their attention kind of in this area. I will say that there's some folks that are expressed interest in all of this. I know State Council is definitely interested in playing a part in all of this. I'm hoping that there might be some service providers that would be interested in this as well, but I also recognize that many of our service providers are in the midst of trying to also run all of their businesses at the same time with kind of continued unprecedented challenges. But again, we're very excited about this because we need eyes and ears and hands all throughout our catchment areas. So there's going to be advertisement that's going to go out related to this. And then there's also going to be an advertisement that's going to go out related to the upcoming focus groups for housing and employment. I will share the housing one is on April 11th from 9 to 11 and April 26th from 1 to 3. And I don't know if Olivia or I don't think Jen Bloom's on here anymore. I don't know if you guys have your dates, but we're going to be sending out a message to folks widely to discuss this. And so with that being said, if there's not anything else, we're going to wish folks a happy weekend and a great rest of their day, and appreciate you guys spending your morning with us. And we'll look forward to talking to everyone next week.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
John.
And since Heather Hollingworth is still on here, congratulations, Heather, again on your master's. All right. Bye, folks.